Hello, Channel Automation podcast listeners. Welcome back to another deep dive into the techniques that convert leads. I'm your host, Casey Arias, and I'm joined today by our local 5.9 and call center expert, Stephen White, and our special guest, also a call center expert, Angela Granroth. Angela has over 25 years of contact center experience in 5 different industries. So welcome, Angela, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so one of the things I want to ask first is, what kind of questions do customers ask that you notice trip up call center representatives?
Well, I think it depends on the industry, probably, right? So, when you think about home improvement, let's just say, I think it's specific types of objections. And I think that all goes back to training. It goes down to training in any industry. Call center agents might take a long time to gain the confidence. They might take a long time to gain expertise with the script. I know in home improvement, there's a really specific methodology that I've seen work over and over if you follow it. But getting that, pizzazz with the script, where when a customer throws a price objection, or they say they only want tile, or they say whatever it might be, getting to the right scripted rebuttal and knowing exactly how to say it and make it their own, I think causes a lot of call center agents to lack confidence, which might lead to the feeling maybe that, oh, this particular type of call center work is not for me. Or, like sales is too hard, the scripted component of it, particularly in, retail home improvement, appointment setting call centers, right? I know that was a challenge for me because most recently I was in customer service and I worked for a monopolized regulated public utility. And so you didn't have a choice. You got one choice for your power and that was it. And we live in Arizona and it's expensive to turn your lights on. So most of the problems we had there were related to high bills and just customer escalations. And, a seasoned contact center agent knows how to alleviate customers' concerns without ever needing to pass it over to a supervisor. So what I think the common thread is, though, regardless of industry, is training. I think the companies that get training right, regardless of an advisor or an agent's fundamental strengths and competencies, if they can get a rock star training put through, I think agents are more expeditiously able to overcome and not allow themselves to get tripped up when they're on the phone. So, like I said, coming here from multiple industries, I think it comes down to training. I don't know what you think, but.
No, I think that training is like a big portion of it. I know, Stephen, you're dying to jump in because Stephen also has trained people. But there is one thing that I wanted to get some elaboration on, and I would love to hear both of you guys talk about this. You said something around the lines of being able for a call center agent to make a script their own. Does that mean any kind of deviation from the script? Because I know that there's a lot of evidence for staying 100% on the script that is effective, and then people deviating a little bit from the script that's also effective. So I want to get a little bit more detail on that.
So I think it depends on who you ask. Some of the people that I've met, been lucky enough to liaise with, interact with, consult with in the home improvement industry, tend to fall either on either side of the camp as kind of a scripted, read the script, 100% script adherence, or at least 90, or follow best practices like don't pause, ask open-ended questions, make sure you don't sound robotic. In my experience, for the first little period, 100% is best. Setting a passing QA threshold of 90% script adherence, I think is acceptable. I think it helps build confidence. I jokingly tell people, how do you get biceps? Well, you eat a lot of chicken and you do bicep curls, that muscle memory, right? So like the muscle memory of the just repetition of reading the script, it will build confidence over time. And then eventually you may be able to add a little, je ne sais quoi, if you will. I got pushed back on that from some industry leaders on the script adherence part, partially because I do come from, my last several endeavors were in very unscripted environments. And so I think the jury's still out, but I do know the methodology works if you follow it, particularly in home improvement when it comes to the value of the visit section of most scripts. I think if you could stick to that and get it right, you're probably going to set the appointment.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I always emphasize on my trainings the value of the visit and how important it is. I think that there's a tendency for people to jump to it a little too soon in their engagement with someone. If they haven't built up the value, or if they haven't learned a little bit about the project, and you get someone on the phone that responds to you, and then you give them the value of the visit within the first 2 lines of your dialogue, then you're automatically going to turn that person into a confused, maybe a little upset person that just wants to hang up on you now. I want to mention back on one of the things we talked about earlier, as far as like training goes, where we're trying to establish a lot of the fundamentals that come with a call center, like you mentioned, the value of the visit and things like that. From my perspective, I have an interesting background where I've come from. Actually, I was a teacher previously. I worked as a teacher for middle school and some high school, and I was accredited for a short time. I just didn't like that path for myself, and I ended up not pursuing it. But coming from that perspective and having that kind of classical pedagogical background, I find a lot of the trainings from certain call centers, it's just been kind of like it's usually someone that's done the job really well, and it's just like, well, you do the job really well, make them do it really well too. And it's really not like that person hasn't been given the tools to succeed in that environment. And so we find a lot of times that they've not, I wouldn't say fallen flat, but maybe fallen a little short of providing like a very successful and like engaging training. Usually it's like, here's the script, memorize the script. Here's the rebuttals, memorize the rebuttals. Did they memorize everything? Bad. And it's like, okay, well, is it their bad or is it the training's bad? And I think maybe you have an opinion one way or the other on that one.
Oh, I have lots of opinions on everything that you just said. So first of all, it's been a long time since I heard anyone refer to pedagogy versus andragogy. I got my master's in adult learning theory, and I'm very passionate about meeting people where they are. And I think one of the common threads I've seen in home improvement agent recruiting and training and skilling, if you will, is, those who can afford to make $17 an hour may fall into a certain demographic. I'm not trying to overgeneralize per se, but, $16, $17 an hour plus commission. My top performing folks are making, $33, $35 an hour-ish. And then I had my people that just made 22 and they were just okay with their life. But all that to say, handing someone a script and saying, go learn how to do this, or go sit next to someone who knows how to do it, isn't training. And you can call it that all day long, but it's not. And I've seen it done that way. And in companies that do it that way, they're not doing well. So I think you need to meet people where they are. You need to employ a lot of different, instructional design methodologies. You don't need to overcomplicate it. The job isn't academically hard, but there are ways to make sure that you hit all the different learning styles that span across generations, because people from, like my son's a freshman in college, and the way he learns, even with a more traditional, mom, in terms of more conservative, classic education type of environment that I grew up in. I had people in call center treat the same class that were 18, 19, 20. And then I had people that were in their 50s and were career call center phone agents that just kind of went followed where the opportunities were. And so I think that you need to give it the sophisticated value that it needs. Our training was, 2 to 3 days. I don't think that you should recruit for a call center agent job and say, start on the phones today. I think that cheapens the opportunity. I think you're going to get a very specific sort of person applying for that job. And that's the environments that hand them the script and say, go do a side-by-side for an hour and learn how to do the job. And it's not going to create long-standing, trustworthy agents that are engaged in your brand. Tell the story of the owners, create some passion for the company, some buy-in, explain the value of the job, the growth pathways, give them some information on the product. In my first home improvement opportunity, I didn't see a product in the whole 3-day training. I did not even know what we were selling. I had no idea. It was such an interesting approach to trying to get someone to help you sell your product when you don't even tell them what it is. And I get the methodology of why in home improvement retail, we don't want to give them too much info because we want those designers to get into those homes and really do their jobs. But I think just some exposure so you can create people that believe in what you do. And it all comes down to an outline, an agenda, instructionally designed, sound methodologies to train that reaches people across all generations. And I think the home improvement industry has some room for improvement in that space based on my experiences.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. And one of the things that I also wanted to kind of connect with, we're talking about a solid agent, somebody who's going to be like, you're meeting them where they stand in terms of training, and then like introducing the products to them, but like kind of gauging where you want to have like they have the knowledge of the product, but they're not going to take the job of the salesman. How can you tell when an agent is going to stay loyal to the company for a long time, or should you not even have that in your mind?
I think it's hard. Right now, what I've come up against is a little bit of an older generational feeling that you can't build loyal employees unless you physically see them. And I don't know how that idea still exists because it's just not true. And so, trying to overcome owners that believe that, you should be in an office and, that sort of water cooler, drip coffee in the break room, coffee pot conversations versus letting people work from home, explaining the role they play in the company, in the company's success. I really find that for my younger workforce, especially in frontline call center agents, they can really work wherever they want. So in Phoenix, saturated call center market, there's a call center on every corner. You can make $17-18 an hour. And I tell people all the time, this is a hustle and a grind job. This is a volume job. If you don't set appointments, you can't work here. So if you want to just go take customer service calls for waste management or Discover Card, there are a plethora of opportunities to do that. But I think if you're forthright with them and honest with them, and you give them opportunities to get on the phones and be successful and then pathway other places if they want to, I think that's how you build employees that want to stay loyal. I say that an appointment setting phone job is like a year. Get it good, 3 to 6 months, last a year, and then go into confirming, go into, training, team lead, whatever. But after that, you start to experience that burnout. So what I say is hire to lose them on purpose. Hire them knowing that you're going to lose them on purpose and create an environment so amazing that they want to stay. It's a little woo-woo, I know. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they think I'm crazy. But I've done it and it works. And it's that kind of career pathways thing that I think inspires people. And of course, working from home. I mean, if you can find a way to keep them engaged and promise that they can stay home and help them build a career, I think your employees will stay.
I think there's a lot of value in offering career paths. And I think that even just career skills as well. One of the things that I saw that was very effective in one of the previous call centers I was working with really drew many parallels from the skills that you learn on the call. And it would just be beyond. It's so much more than just learning the script. It's also like these negotiation strategies or these like ways to engage people in your everyday life. Here's ways that you can try talking to your wife, try talking to your kids here, use these negotiation strategies for your everyday life and see your life improve. And it was, people would see that and they'd go, wow, you know what? I'm learning things that I can apply to everyday life. Like, I feel like I'm bettering myself here. I want to continue to grow as a person. And I feel like this is the opportunity for me to grow as a person and professionally. Like if you can reach and fit that niche, there's a lot of people out there right now that feel like they're going nowhere in life. And I feel like the call center environment is sometimes the epitome of that, where it's like, well, I really got my degree. I got a call center call the other day, and this person was like, well, I got my psychology degree, but I'm at a call center, but I don't think of it as a call center job. I really think of it as I'm an employee specialist, or she said something specialist. I can't remember. And she like really just had to like buy into the own delusion of like, this is actually just a jumping point for me to actually go into be an amazing person. I'm like, they really sold you on that, didn't they? But I
I'll
mean, good
have
for the
you know,
company.
that is not a delusion. That is not a delusion.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as a psychology major. So now, see, I know
I'm
you
a
was,
psychology major. Do you know how hard I tried not to have a career call center? I am the poster child. If anyone from previous employers, they will probably see this. They won't be able to recite what I'm about to say because I've said it so many times. I tried so hard. I said, I'm going to do this and put myself through college because you can't possibly make a career out of this. Then I went to work for University of Phoenix because it wasn't a call center. It was a school. No, it was a call center, and I worked there for 15 years. Then I went to the financial services. Wasn't a call center. Yes, it was. It was debt relief settlement call center. Then I went to utilities. It was utilities. Did we create nuclear fission and power? Yes. But was I on the phones? My team was on the phones, and so I tried really hard not to. I got my undergrad at psych, so that's funny that you say that. It's just something about being able to be a little bit more outside the box, to be able to be more uniquely you. I definitely didn't fit in with the regulated public utility space, a little too conservative for me, but other than that, it kind of, it lends itself to people that are professional, academically intelligent, capable. If they're, willing to drive, innovate, have big ideas, speak up, challenge, that kind of thing. And that's my brand. And so I think that's why I've been here for so long, despite my best efforts to try to get out. The new trend thing is customer success. People know that people don't like call centers and they don't want to work in them. So all these openings you see now, call it a customer success expert. So that's a little recruiting strategy. It makes people feel better about the fact that they're on the phones.
I think that was the line she drew.
We've got we're talking about some controversial topics on this podcast. I freaking love it. So one of the things, because we are talking about things where not everybody's going to agree with it, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody approaches call centers differently. I'm sorry, customer specialists, they approach differently. So one of the things that you mentioned before that I wanted to kind of backtrack on is you said it's hard to convince upper management about the benefits of remote work. And me and Steven are 100% remote work, so we obviously love to hear about that. But what do you say for the people who are interested in doing remote work and they're like, hey, give me a pros and cons list? Like, where do you start?
Sometimes it's hard for me because I'm too direct. So I struggle. You can't help people that don't want to be helped. You can't influence people that are not necessarily influenceable. And so you can say all day long, you're trying to recruit for a job that's not super admirable for a lot of people. In a saturated call center market, you're making them work 6 days a week. And, maybe the leads are there, maybe they're not, but you don't have any differentiating qualities about your employment opportunity. Especially in Phoenix, in-office call centers just don't exist here really like they used to. And so I think you need to find a way to differentiate yourself. And I went to a conference where I was able to meet dealers from across the country, and we talked a lot about work from home, specifically in their retail home improvement appointment setting space. And the majority of them are still full in office, whether they have 5 people on the phones or they have 60 people on the phones. And I just think they're really missing the mark. In terms of finding talent in more remote areas, maybe if they want to stay in their own state or their own geographical region, finding those, diamonds in the rough with people that would be great on the phones, but just, they live in a more rural area. Maybe they're a military spouse. I don't know, but it's true. And I already knew it was true way pre-COVID, but post-COVID, we all know it's true that we can work from home and be productive. So let's stop pretending like going back into the office is going to help us be engaged and believe in the brand and loyal to the company. All we do is shoot the breeze in the break room and waste time. It's just more productive. Agents are more productive. They're able to take more calls. This transcends industry, by the way. It's irrefutable in my experience that you get those riffraff people that just stay in after call work because they're just lazy. And what do? Well, you fire them. That's what you do. You tell them you got to take calls if you want to be on phones. And you fire them. And, stop holding on to people that don't deserve to work for you or your owners or your brand, thinking that you can change them. Create a developmental model that allows you to coach remotely, watch your dashboards, have a one-on-one with your people every single week, and be truthful about their performance. Give them a acceptable period of time to improve, and if they can't do it remotely, it'll be easy to find someone that can. And the last thing I'll say, and it looks like Stephen has some things to say as well, is I've outsourced staffing at multiple places, and that's another interesting concept that I think not a lot of home improvement companies are doing, where we had people working across the country. Some industries are using, BPOs nearshore or even offshore, and I'm sure you guys have some experience with that. I think that is an untapped opportunity in home improvement to find better quality talent, is to go remote and then recruit remotely and do perhaps a temp to hire model. I've done that a couple times, where for the first 90 days, they work from home remotely as employees of the staffing firm. And then at the 90-day mark, if they've proven themselves, they're hitting their numbers and they believe in what you're offering, maybe you bank their bonus and give it as a sign-on and offer them a letter of employment and have them join you. And so lots of different answers to a very, what you would think would be a simple question. But this is probably the thing I am for sure the most passionate about. And I could talk about it all day.
Yeah, I could tell. There's so much to go over. A couple things I want to mention, maybe highlight. I don't think I'm pushing back on anything here, honestly, which maybe I'm not the best for. We need to go to the office. Not really something that's in my wheelhouse at all. But so for remote workers, there's this cool analogy that I heard the other day that stuck with me, where I don't really have a good visual for this, but just work with me for a minute. So imagine your employment pool, since you're working in the office and it's in, let's say, downtown OC, which in Southern California, like the Disneyland-ish area. And you have a remote worker. Like, how far typically would a person be willing to drive who's going to be coming into the office? That's your talent pool. Someone who's willing to drive 30, 40 minutes. Maybe you're pushing it at that point for this job. It's not going to build a lot of loyalty. Someone's going to start to feel the drag of working for this company, because your 8-hour day isn't an 8-hour day. It's actually 8+ drive time day, where you're sitting there for 8, 9, 9.5 hours. I knew someone that drove 3 hours to their job. Why? And so that was their 8-hour a day was actually 14-hour day. And I'm just like, I would leave that job instantly. Someone who has a remote talent pool, your horizons expand. Its entire world is your talent pool. Anybody that has internet access essentially is your potential employee. So you've just really expanded your ability to deal with, and I'll segue into the other thing. You said someone that sits on after call work all the time, which I know people that hang on to those employees because they get good numbers or something. I'm like, anybody can do that. You don't need those guys. They're wasting your time. Fire them and find someone that's better, honestly, because you're going to find somebody with this larger talent pool now that you've expanded your call center from this little tiny pond to this infinite growing pond. To find the better talent who can do the job the way we need to have it done. Weekly trainings, oh my God, so needed. Not everybody does it. I can't believe it. And then also, I like the idea of offshore employees. We actually have a few employees on our team that are within other parts of the world. So yeah. We do dabble in all those things, and I'm excited to hear someone be an advocate for them.
I just don't understand it. I mean, if anything, I think one of the biggest surprises one of the most positive things that came from COVID is the realization that we're all still just humans going through the world. I think for a while there, it was like, you're working 12, 14 hours a day as a senior leader or even as an up and comer. And part of that includes a commute. Mm-hmm. And you're in the hustle and you're in the grind. And then when are you actually spending time with the people that you chose? Your loved ones, your kids, your friends. All of a sudden you're eating out 6 nights a week. Your laundry's not done. Your house is a mess. So, COVID rolls in, and I was working from home for a very long time, having built work from home teams, a couple times prior to that. We took, a 300 person call center home-ish in 2 days. And all of a sudden there's dogs barking and there's babies crying, but everybody says it's okay because of COVID. Well, guess what? Something changed during that period of time where I just feel like the average consumer is a little bit more tolerant. And so you're home and you're on the phones and your kid gets home from school or your dog barks. I don't hear that being a problem anymore. And that was the most common thing when I was standing up my first work from home team a million years ago, is what are you going to do with the background noise? And, you work your way through it. And I think that that's been debunked. And so now it's like, what are you holding on to? Like, do you want to, have an engaged workforce that appreciates the fact that work-life balance is one of your core values? Demonstrate work-life balance in your own actions, encourage them to log off when it's time to log off and go be with the people that they choose, and allow them to come back invigorated to do the work for you the next day. I just feel like it seems like such an easy conversation to have that I struggle to understand why people still aren't willing to try it.
I love your emphasis on the people that you choose. I think that there's not a lot of that going on. I haven't heard that phrase almost from anybody else working in home improvement. So,
well, I mean, because it's two things. It's the people that you recruit yourself to surround yourself with at work. So those are some people that you choose. Like, for example, my last company, I pulled over someone that worked for me 10 years ago. And you know what happened? Every single day at work was fun. Not a day went by where I didn't have fun. And so it's like, yeah, of course I want to surround myself with high talent, well-developed, seasoned talent. But like, if they suck, well, I don't want to have crappy days all the time in my personal life or my professional life. So get really good at recruiting, get really good at, picking a partner. I mean, you have kids, you're kind of stuck with them because you're their mom or dad. But like, try to make them be some good humans so they're fun to be around too, and make sure they don't hang out with not good humans. And I mean, I just think, especially when it comes to the industry that brought us all together, right? Retail, home improvement. It's just not that serious, And so, I mean, when I compare it to, nuclear fission, we really shouldn't be having that many bad days. It's not that deep, And so, like, yes, there are brilliant minds in this industry. They're doing cutting edge stuff. But when it comes down to the fundamental methodologies, there's a few best practices that I think some people are still holding on to old ideals and unwilling to explore. And ultimately, I think that's going to cause them to get passed up by people who are willing to take more risks.
Absolutely. And also, me and Steven have absolutely no idea what you're talking about in terms of choosing the people that you work with. How long have we worked together, Steven? And how many jobs have we gone through?
Oh, gosh.
We worked together for over a decade. And so, yeah, absolutely. We're big advocates of choosing the people that you work with.
That's great.
If you choose to work with the people that you're close to, or at least can tolerate at the bare minimum, then yeah, your work is not going to be as miserable. And people are saying like, oh, well, what if you get paid this, and that? What if you are involved with like a job that you really like? One person can ruin your day. And I know that is so silly, and a lot of people that are in upper management, that they don't even consider that at all. But one person can be like the reason that you quit.
Culture is all I'm interested in at this stage of my life. I'm living my best personal life for a lot of reasons, and that's for another podcast. But I refuse to settle in my professional life. And so if the culture isn't great, the money can be all the money in the world. But if the culture isn't great, and if the leaders, owners, C-suite, executives, private equity firms, whatever it is, if they're not willing to allow their people to build a stellar culture, I don't want any part of it. And so part of that comes from giving people autonomy to hire and recruit the right people at the right time for the right jobs, and moving people around when it doesn't fit. So if someone is a cultural fit, I had a perfect example of someone in home improvement, a retail home improvement, who was really great on the phones and, was hired to, train and then manage people on the phones. And it just wasn't necessarily a direct fit, but she was culturally a fit. And so it's like, let's develop and coach and have some uncomfortable conversations and just get real for a second. And let's figure out where we can put her so she can be more successful. And I think more people need to do that.
I think just like kind of like on the spot firing just because they're not hitting the marks within the first month is a absolute pandemic, if you will, of the industry. And let me tell you, when I'm participating and helping people hire for their call center or for their business, and they're telling me like, oh man, they're just not hitting the mark. And I'm like, this is their second week of training. And I'm not trying to like be an advocate for that person necessarily. I'm just trying to put like a realistic standard on things. Now, if within the second week they're coming to work and like it's clear that they're addicted to like, you know, some sort of hard drug and they can't function. That's one thing. And not to say that drug addicts can't be a part of the workplace. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, if they can't perform their duties, that's going to be a problem. And so that's one thing.
It's a culture killer. It's a culture killer. You're not going to create a place where people want to be part of it. If they come in one day and they say you didn't hit your numbers, you haven't set an appointment in 2 days, you've been here for 2 weeks, this isn't the place for you. Like, that's just not how it's done. And if you can't sit down at night and say that you did everything that you could do to train these people and provide them with the right resources to be successful, do that first before you let someone go, and give them time to get better before you do it. That will help you keep good people and attract good people.
And if you put in that time to them, boy, oh boy, you're going to create a loyal person. Because like some people can come right into the business and it's like, I can see the potential in you, but you're not there. And if they're willing to listen and learn, that's going to be some of the best people that work in your call center.
Absolutely.
All right. So one thing we're starting to get close on time here. And Angela, you're a fantastic guest, and I would love to hear more about what you have to say in terms of like company culture and hiring. Like this is a conversation that could go on for quite a while. I'm just trying to, narrow it down a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is, what is some call center technology that, in your opinion, is a must-have, especially when it comes to like remote work? What is something that is going to be like, my team has to have this?
So I'm going to keep it really simple in answering this because I know we're running out of time, and I don't, I've told a couple people recently, and I think I told Vic this as well. I know like enough to sound like I know a lot and to seem dangerous, but like I'm not the person that's all about the sexiest technologies. I'm all about what works. I'm all about pragmatism and logic. Stay with the times, but don't go to all these conferences and then leave with 16 business cards and take a bunch of free lunches and try 16 technologies if you haven't gotten everything else that's fundamental to running a good call center figured out first. Technology is not going to solve your problems. So in terms of remote work, what I will say is cameras are required. It's a non-negotiable, and if you don't want to be on camera, then you can't work here. I'm sorry, but I'm not asking. I'm telling you that being on camera a % of the time with your coworkers and engaging with us and coming off of mute and saying something and having an opinion is required. And that is not technologically difficult nor expensive, an easy thing to do. And if you have the right speed of internet, your video should be just fine and we can all be friends on camera. Whatever technology you're using to connect with each other, whether it be Teams or Zoom or Google, wherever, you guys have got, use it and use it regularly. I know in home improvement, retail appointment setting call centers, we do a daily stand-up where we run through our numbers. We talk about our capacity. We talk about overbookings. We connect every single day via camera. Every one-on-one I've ever done is always on camera. So, I'll leave that where it stays. It's very basic. It's very pumpkin spice latte, if you will, right? Like very basic. But the other thing that comes to mind is what I think we're struggling with still in the industry that we've been, chatting about today, is just communicating with customers in their channel of choice. If you're using an outdated texting methodology or no texting at all, you're going to get passed up, and you're going to get passed up fast. I think that holding on to that idea that you still have to set every single appointment on the phone, it makes me sad. I am a person who talks on the phone for a living. I am on calls or meetings all day long. If you call me when I am not at work, I am not answering the phone, unless you're my dad. Where I'm not answering the phone, unless you're my kid and you got a flat tire. So we're not talking on the phone. If I can't do business with you another way, we're not doing business. And so I think a baseline, omni-channel is such a buzzword, but a way to communicate with your customers in a channel that they desire, make it easier for them to do business with you. Don't harass them into multi-channel contacts if they've indicated a preference of how they want to interact with you. Are the two things that come to mind first, and neither of them are technically complex. And I'm not even calling out a specific technology. I'm just saying those two things specifically, I think, will help set you apart and help your team stay connected.
Amen. That's really why I feel like I just got teed up, because being a part of channel automation, we do offer this awesome texting solution, which many of our clients are actually setting their own appointments. We're finding opportunity where it is. So if someone, I know, especially my wife at home, will never answer the phone ever, will never answer the phone. So, I mean, if you wanted her to buy something from you, you would need to find another avenue. And I think we found that maybe this has come with a cultural shift. Maybe there's a lot of people that have gotten used to staying at home or staying away from others. They're just not willing to talk on the phone as often. And if you're not utilizing these other channels for communication, then like you just said, you're missing out. And there's lots of opportunity out there for those who are willing to experiment and find out what is the best or maybe the most efficient way to reach several channels and succeed.
And the last thing I'll say, Casey, don't get mad at me because I know we're at time, but I will say, Vic, nobody's sending me a Dutch Brothers gift card for this statement, okay? But one thing that I was surprised by is it doesn't have to be expensive. So if you're in contact centers and you're being wooed by the big players in this space, you're wasting your time. Stop taking lunches with the big fish in the little pond and start taking lunches or just virtual e-chats. Text, reach out to people, the smaller players in the space. The technology is way sexier, it's way easier to administrate, and it's way less expensive. It's way less expensive. I think you're doing it wrong if you think rolling everything up into one package with the big player is the way that you're going to be successful. I think you can go smaller and go simpler. I think you could pull somebody off the phones that's a hypo that you don't even know codes for fun on the weekends and have them administrate your texting platform for you.
Absolutely. And and then we hear this all the time. So that's a perfect lead in, Angela. And I have to I'm not going to get mad at you, by the way. Like, we don't have any sort of rigid threshold of when the podcast starts and ends. I just want to make sure that we're not going for 2 hours because I know it's super easy to do so. But one of the things
people won't watch it.
Yeah, which I try to appease the audience that's getting a shorter and shorter attention span these days. And so one of the things that you mentioned in terms of you don't want to roll everybody up into one category. And I come from the type of person who would rather book an appointment through an email. If I fill a form online and somebody calls me right away, I'm like, leave me alone. And I know it's such a weird psychology behind it. And I would love to have a podcast just talking about why is it that you don't want to be called the second you fill a form? But I think part of it is you're doing it as step one, as something that you need to get done. And then having that little chance to respond to somebody on a messenger app or a text message or something that I consider to be kind of lower on the commitment scale than a phone call. Sometimes that's what the person needs to get into the conversation. Those are the appointments that tend to be stickier too. I think
it just cheapens the customer's experience. I mean, I know that's how they do it, and I know about speed to lead, and I know about all those things. I know about all of them. It's a little outdated, in my opinion, to continue to hammer customers in that way. Most recently, I heard a voicemail where a customer re-recorded their voicemail message to say, I do not need a shower right now. Stop calling me. That is what their voicemail said. And, when you go in and you're entering your information and, it's a paid lead, you're getting called by 4 or 5 companies several times per day. And so I think it kind of cheapens the customer experience a little bit. And if you already are not urgently in need of home improvement services, repairs, or products, it's an easy thing to kick down the road and move on to the next thing on your to-do item because you're getting harassed with phone calls. And so while I think there is a specific customer segment that methodology works very well for, and I have seen it work very well for that specific subset of customers, especially the ones urgently in need, you got to think a little differently about your database and those leads after day age 7 or 8. I think the way you nurture those campaigns needs to be a little bit more evolved for customers to really want to pick up and or converse via text at the point that their lead becomes older.
And if you think about upcoming people, now you're going to be marketing to the older millennials. You're not going to be sticking around with these 70 to 80-year-old people. The next group is coming in, and we grew up in the age of be careful of internet scams, be careful of internet privacy. And so if all of a sudden my information is being shared with a whole bunch of people in a pool, I feel violated. I'm like, dude, I just put in my information to one form, which I thought was one company, and now you're telling the whole world everything? Like, come on, man. So I can understand.
I think it's also like an American thing to not want to be sold. There's like something about us where it's like you want them to feel like we want to feel like we are in charge of, like, that we have the buying power. You know, it's kind of like when you enter your information on a website for a vehicle. I mean, you're going to get a phone call in less than 30 seconds if you enter your information on that site. And they're going to introduce themselves as the fleet manager, as if they have special options for you that all the regular guys on the lot don't have. And, you know, they're going to try to make you feel special. I mean, there's a sales approach, there's a sales tactic, there's a psychology to it. My only opinion is related to be progressive, be ahead of the curve, and don't be so stuck in what worked in the 80s and 90s, because you're going to get passed up. And so I think a basic texting strategy, even, where you can actually funnel the texts to agents like a phone call, versus, just this big running number of texts where you're hunting and pecking for who to reply to and when, is just like price of admission stuff, I think, in our industry now. You can't operate well without it.
Absolutely. All right. So I know we got a lot to talk about, and I would love to do a part 2 with you, Angela. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And that's going to be it for us today. So whether you love or hate what we talked about, we do want to hear from you. And so comment or shoot us an email at hello@channelautomation.com. Also, please consider subscribing to this podcast and continue getting tips on marketing, call center, anything related to how you can succeed in your respective industry. And as always, keep that conversion high.